navigate that, how to use life lessons as a part of your daily interaction with students. And I think a good place to start with that is just the whole philosophy behind that. What should we be doing? What is our responsibility to teach life lessons? I guess like the pros and cons to it, because it is a part of SEL, like the whole idea of, getting to know people and kind of creating a sense of empathy and things like that. And I guess from one vantage point, you say it really allows the students to get to know you. On the other hand, from maybe a parent perspective, they may not share your values and want the students to know your experiences because it might not align with what they want their kids to do.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, the balancing act. If it becomes a topic that they might not want to be discussed, or if it's a viewpoint they don't share, it could become a problem, I guess. Mm-hmm. I personally have not had that, but just from a philosophical standpoint, I can see how that could be an issue.
Yeah, I've definitely had that. And look, it's just the danger of teaching, I guess. You're just, especially without giving too much away, it's just one part of the dangers of teaching and trying to do better for your students, trying to do all this SEL stuff, right? And again, I think we've brought this up in the past, just some parents might feel this is not your job. You teach just that subject and keep everything else out of it. I think we were talking a little bit earlier that I'm battling with the huge technical issue that I had yet again at the beginning of this show. So just for all you viewers at home, none of you right now, I need two programs open to be running this show live. There's two versions of OBS. The old version of OBS makes the audio in this one work. If that was not open, the audio doesn't work. So got kicked offline for whatever reason. I restarted the stream again. And so I apologize for, yet again, 6 shows. I don't think we've got a clean single episode yet of no technical issues.
No one also knows what OBS means.
No, well, it's the open broadcast software that many people do.
No one needs to know any of this, by the way.
Yeah.
We're just gonna...
Yeah. So
we're imperfectly perfect, and that's fine.
That's part of SEL.
Yeah. But it's frustrating. It is. But it's frustrating to go through. So, I've had...
I'm like moving away from you. I'm sorry. It's nothing wrong with you. I'm like hopping around over here.
I've had parents, I've had a parent reach out to me just to say, look, stick to your subject. And, with directive, not only from the principal, but my supervisor, and that we're to be adjusting the way that we handle students each year, that last year and this year, just to be a little bit more empathetic, to be a little bit more understanding, to take note of what's going on. And, those teachable moments, or those moments when you need to kind of help talk someone down a little bit from where they're at in their head, you have to, right? Because to some degree, it's almost as though you play some parental role while you're with them, or at least you're modeling some of the ways that you would rather your students behave or handle something that they don't agree with. So by in some way, shape, or form, just by the very act of you standing in front and saying or teaching or what have you, you're giving off your values and, the way you think about the world in some way, shape, or form. Everything you say and do is colored and reflected in how you act. So I try and stay as impartial as I can. And as I was saying a little bit earlier, I won't mention who or what have you, but there have been circumstances where and just to put audience's kind of fears aside, they're no longer with the school. But I have heard and seen situations where the students are kind of being indoctrinated for specific, almost specific religious views. It wasn't religion that was going on, but that lifestyle, and that is some of the dangers, right? I don't want to show that, like me, I might do a keto or a carnivore diet, right? For example, I found that one way or another of eating is good for me. I would never say to someone, I might suggest it as a healing modality, a short term, try this, if you're open to it. But I would never indoctrinate or push that as you definitely need, oh no, you shouldn't eat that. The only time I ever say not to is if they're drinking soda and eating Doritos, and then I might say, you might want to look at your life a little bit. So that's the
so you're talking about me. No, but the thing is, again, you said it comes out in any type of teaching that you're doing, anything that you're doing, even me from the classroom and now being a school counselor, right? Some of the things, my feelings, my beliefs, my experiences, they come out in the way that I speak to my students, right? Just as it does in your English classroom and in your shop. So the thing is, we present it to them as, this is something that I've experienced. This is something that works for me. It doesn't work for everyone, but it's just giving you another thing that you can kind of put your toes into. You can see, you can check it out for yourself and educate yourself on, right? Yeah. So opening them up to things that maybe their families don't know about, maybe they don't have any experience with, maybe that they've never heard of, maybe they never heard of keto, right? And maybe it would be helpful for them to shift their lifestyle. But it's not, like you said, with someone else saying, no, you need to do this, or you need to change this to have a better life.
I think sometimes it's a planting of a seed, right? You know something is very beneficial. You've lived that life, enough life to understand that, this could really help someone or an individual if they kind of dip their toes into this arena in life. So it's kind of mentioning it and allowing life for them to kind of take over and see if it means anything to them further down the line, maybe after school.
Yeah, I do think it's the way you present yourself as a teacher and the rapport you establish with them from the beginning that's going to dictate where you can go with your own sense of my personal stories and the lessons that I'm going to teach them that might be more life-based. However, you do have to be careful with you just kind of know from other people in the school sometimes that person I don't think should be telling the life lessons, because I don't know whether I would ever want them to tell about their life, depending on if they're too young, if they're whatever. You just tell some people really have a very strong sense of whether it's a social justice issue or a political leaning or what, and you're just don't get into that. You have to stay impartial. And for me, I can easily do that. I play that both sides all the time in my classroom. So I never say I'm all about this or I'm all about that. And students will sometimes try to test me on that. I had a student last year who was, very much on one side of the aisle as far as the political leanings. And I could just tell where the vast majority of the others were just kind of waiting for, and I would just be I'm not going to be baited by anything. And I'm also not going to let anybody gang up on this person or whatever. So I just said, look, you make a valid point on this, but on the other side, it's that, and both sides have flaws, and just kind of presenting things, because the world, I think, that's been being presented to our students now and for young people today is very black and white. It's very opposite, polar opposites. And I find the middle to kind of let them know the middle is where more of us should be to get to understand both sides. I also present myself as a very flawed person, and I tell them, and that really, because I teach honors students, I tell them I was not I had one class of honors when I was in high school, and I found it to be boring, and the people didn't want to have fun in the class, and they were all business and they didn't talk. And I said that wasn't fun for me, so I went to classes that were fun. I didn't care about my GPA. I didn't care about those things, and I wound up getting to where I wanted to get to. I was never a great student, but I got what I needed to done. And I try to do these things, and that's 100% true. Even in college, I had the lowest GPA out of all the students in the English department and all the students in the education department, and my school hated that, but I was I have a high enough grade to student teach, so I'm going to student teach. And I said, that didn't bother me because I did what I needed to do to get to where I wanted to go, yet didn't sacrifice hanging out with my friends and all this other stuff. And they feel like they have to go one speed, 1,000 miles per hour towards education. And I said, you're 16 years old, you're 17, schedule things in your life that you might have fun doing and socializing and different things like that. And it's almost like they've never heard that before.
Yeah.
It's almost like they've never heard that it's okay to do that. It's okay to take a day and do this, or not spend 5 hours on this assignment or whatever. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Advocate for yourselves, like try to find balance. And it's not anything that's against anyone else. It's just for me to say, from my experience, that's all I'm giving you, my experience. This is how I operate, and it works for me. Maybe it'll work for you, and then we go from there.
Yeah, so many different topics. We when I talk to my to my students, one of the things that almost every year I'd like to tell them that I was literally juggling in my head then what story should I tell, but I literally tell them that stop thinking of the world, because I think it's a very olden way, is a very yesterday sort of way to think of ourselves. And it's a new way for me to think as well, that I'm not, and I've said this before, an hourly rate by the number of hours that I work, especially with the digital media, the graphic design, the music creation, the video editing, like all the things that could be, even creating files with a pen tool to make money these days. There's so many people that want these skills. You don't need to be working at some warehouse or stacking shelves or what have you. That there's literally, you could be making money while you sleep, and I give them the ways in which I have. And I often find that those not teachable moments, but those lessons from my life, just to show them that, because it gives them a bit of hope, that because before, to get anything more, we'd have to work more hours, longer days, more days, different jobs, educate yourself even further to climb up within the ranks. And it's a very slow process. So I love because you see a lot of them going, oh, wait a minute, really? And some of them already know. And then I get the hands up, Jones, I actually buy and flip sneakers. I'm like, what? And then I hear of all the students that buy sneakers and they hold on to them and then they flip them and they tell me like how much crazy money they're making. And it's there's a lot of sharing of techniques and methodologies of just the simple thing of making more money, which is obviously foundational to living. But it's pretty cool to kind of share those little tips and tricks.
I guess the thing that, I'm over here like racking my brain as I listen to you both talk, when we're talking about life lessons, like, give me an example of something, right, while we're here together, that you're like, that's something that maybe shouldn't be addressed or approached in the classroom. Like you said, like, even with political stuff, it's okay because you can operate in that black and white area, right? Is there anything that, like, in this moment you're like, yeah, that's something that maybe we shouldn't touch in school, as far as how it would affect our students and how it would affect their learning or them moving forward from a class? Is there anything that you can really think of that like touches in that area?
Well, I think by the very essence of it, SEL is learning that ability to discuss everything. So I'm more leaning towards, I'm not sure that there's things that, because like Dave said, I like to play both sides of that argument. So I might say, well, yeah, you believe in the pronouns and you think pronouns are stupid, so you get this argument going on, and it's not a taking of sides, but you play kind of devil's advocate for each. And I think the only time I might fall into what you're asking, that category, is when I don't know enough about that subject to even play devil's advocate. So I'm like, I got to do my research here. I don't know what the conversation is.
It is up to the individual and their comfort level and how they feel they can best tackle that topic without leaning towards a side and ostracizing the other side at the same time. But as an example, every year before I teach Huck Finn, I have a lesson where before I teach, I talk about the use of the N-word. And I say to them, and this is always something that becomes one of those topics where they're like, oh, here we go. And I say, should anyone be allowed to use the N-word? If so, who? And like, what are the rules attributed to it? That's how I start. And I let them all write a response. That's a public response that everyone else in the class can see. And I don't tell them anything about it. I don't teach anything about it. I just say, where do you stand on it, right? Then the next day we start going into a debate about it. And it's always something where undoubtedly I'll have black students in the class, but they will be the minority. And you always think, how are they going to feel? But whenever I do it, they're always like, I'm so glad you brought this up. And they get like energized and they're just like, let's have this conversation, because I said, look, it's going to be in Huck Finn. I want you to understand like why it's there and what the meaning is and then how it applies to your lives. Most of the things when I'm teaching the literature, I always connect it to like now. I always try to make it somehow applicable to their day-to-day lives and what they're experiencing. So even now I'm teaching The Crucible and I just talk about like hysteria and scapegoating and just the idea of people getting all worked up over fear and what fear can drive people to do and things like that, which is still an issue in our society. And this is, going back to the 1690s about just attacking people just because of what they look like or their accents or how they dress or whatever. But it just makes it real for them. And it makes them kind of like pay attention more to what I'm teaching them. But with the use of the N-word, it's a great conversation. Show them articles, show them different points of view, but they always leave there kind of going like, thinking like, I never thought about this before.
Yeah.
And I say it because my friends say it, and I'm not even black, but I live in an area where my friends let me say it and they don't say anything about it. And I'm like, well, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? How do you feel? And I just let them talk. And then by the end, I give them my vantage point on it. I said, look, I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm just telling you, these are the things you have to be aware of. This is where I stand on it. And I just kind of tell them like, you're never going to get ahead because of that, but you could lose a job because of that. You'll never. Mm-hmm. So I said, if you can't control it in your vocabulary, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. If you could turn it on with some people and turn it off with others, then fine. But just be careful that you don't go to a different place and they have a different set of rules. Because I said, look, I've had students tell me I'm allowed to use it because I'm cool, I'm different. I'm like, thanks, but I'm not going to go walk down in the inner city and just start shouting. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense, Right. So I tell them like my wife who's black, she does not use the word. She doesn't care for the word. But again, then she won't correct people all the time. So you don't have to necessarily police it. So just all the different viewpoints on it. But that's a topic that I think is a very difficult issue to navigate. And literally every year I address it. And I know there's going to be people who are like cringing about it. But as you said, Andrew, the idea of SEL is to be able to have these conversations. And I feel comfortable and confident in being able to navigate the conversation no matter what direction it takes and be able to kind of play that middle role and just play the facilitator and let them sort themselves out.
Now I keep jumping in. I'm sorry.
No, that's your job.
Because I have the questions today.
Oh, there we go. Host.
You know what the interesting thing is now? Think about this is now when we're in person and you're able to address them as students in your classroom. Now think back to when we were virtual. Not only were you addressing them, but you were also addressing their families and anyone else who could be in the room, right? So again, for you, did that shift your approach? Because I feel like for most people in the classroom, they would have shifted their approach based on who else could potentially be hearing it.
Made me a lot more politically correct. And again, if I'm a little bit skewed in the way that I think, then maybe that would go a bit awry. But yeah, I found myself trying to be a little wiser, a little smarter, and sometimes you would have to placate someone else that was online, excuse me, or someone that was being goofy or what have you, because they're goofing in front of their family. But yeah, I actually personally I really enjoyed the cameras. I wish that we were on the cameras even now. I wish the students were as well, a little bit more. But again, that's a whole nother topic for another day. It just be, some are just so shy. So I'm very happy that we're all back in class. Dave, what's your take on it?
Well, I do not like the cameras. I'm going to go against you 100% on that. I love having the students right there in person. Love it. And I get more energy from being there. Yeah. And also I get a lot more of the nonverbal feedback that I need from them. So even the quiet ones, I can see their eyes. They're wearing masks, but I can see their eyes. I could tell when they're looking at me and paying attention. I could tell just from their eyes or a head nod. They understand what I'm saying. So in every class, as I'm talking and I'm scanning the students, I'll undoubtedly see students going, like they're agreeing with what I'm saying, which means I know that they get what I just said. And a lot of times when it is a life lesson thing and I'm like, listen, just like how people, and they're like most of them would not put their cameras on, and you can't do anything about it. You just put it on. No, what are you going to do? Argue with the kid for 40 minutes? So sitting in class, having their attention, seeing their eyes, seeing the head nods, the head shakes, whatever it is, you get so much more feedback than a camera that's not on or just through a chat or whatever. And I had no problem with I wanted I wish the whole family was sitting there and I would teach the whole family. I don't care. And I didn't change anything. Cause I'm just, that's just how I am. So whether they were all sitting around the table listening to me or whatever, I just said, this is how I am. And I don't think I did anything wrong. But if anything, if they told me, oh, my dad's saying, yeah, he did that. And I'm like, tell him this. And I'm like, I was talking about like Napster or something. Yeah, I used to make CDs for everybody. And he's like, oh, my dad remembers Napster. And I'm like, yeah, did he make CDs? And I'm like, put them on. Tell him to check. Like, I would try to make it like, let them know. And then like, my mom's sitting here right now and she said she knows blah, blah, blah. And she did transcendentalism. And I'm like, cool. Like, she did that. And then I like, let her know that tried to, and we just, I embraced it. The only thing I did do probably last year differently than this year was basically, I think I was more self-deprecating and like a humorous way, just because I'd be like, all right, no one's listening, so no one can. And I would like say things that were more like humorous just because I'm like, felt like I was talking to myself all the time.
Well, you got to keep them a little bit more interested, don't you?
But it's just hard because you didn't get really to know their personalities all that much in a large part, right? So you have like your few who are outgoing enough that you can get to know them, but for the other ones, you're just like, it's not that serious. Like, I know it's tough. I would just try to make them laugh or smile or whatever for a little bit, even if it was like, because it might be difficult for them to be at home. So
that one question about the N-word, we were having a debate in class. Actually, the students they started to have an argument, and I kind of start to voice my opinion on it. And then I kind of realized I got nothing to back it up. I got no experience about it. I got no, the only time I'd ever used it was, wow, how old was I? Maybe 8, 9, 10. I got in so much trouble. My dad got into a fist fight with their dad. This was years ago in England. And so even to this day, the ramifications of being a stupid kid, saying stupid stuff, when we thought we were being funny, like my brother and I, and just incredible. So I came home that night not knowing what to do, just truly frustrated, but I wanted to get my point across. And I know this incredible designer. He's got a clothing line in Japan. He's got a clothing line here in Patterson, I think. His name's Q. And he actually years ago used to go to Passaic County Tech, and the stories I interviewed him for back then, The Path We Take, but it's all going to be in the Mellow app. So he's a former student. He went about 24, 25 around years ago to the school, but he gave me. I said, look, I'm kind of, my own personal opinion is I'm kind of disgusted by the overuse, and he gave me, and again, it's his own personal take, which is going to be different from others. But then I went in school the next day and I said, look, there's, and maybe as a white person it was stupid for me to say, but it's when I think of someone like who's like, this guy's got like dreadlocks down to his knees, you know, he's a massive man, he speaks words of wisdom, he goes around and he talks to troubled youth and he helps them. So but anyway, I said one of the blackest people I know.
What does that mean?
Exactly. That's what what
What does it mean?
as I was going to say that, I'm like, I could see myself saying it in my head, and I was saying exactly the same thing. But I was trying to equate to the students that I don't have a stance to explain my viewpoint, because why are you going to listen to me through my experiences? I got nothing to. But I spoke to someone that I believe in. We're pretty good friends, and we're going to be there for each other. If he needs help, I'm there, and I know that he'll be there for me if I need help. You know, hey Q, could you, you know? So in that sense, he's not like a friend, but he's up there, and one of the people I know that if I wanted help, he'd help me, and vice versa. So I gave them what he said, and which was, you know, people fought, people went to war for the freedom of all people. But I forget exactly what he said at the time. But at the next day, I reiterated what was said, and there was a bit of a silence in the room. You could tell that his words resonated with those that understood it. And me, even to this day, I'm kind of like, still, I get it. Some of the key stuff that he was saying, you know, that people went to war to fight for their freedom and to not be spoke to in a certain way. And, you know,
it just goes to the empathy part, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about saying I understand. It's just
Yeah.
be like it impacts you differently, and
Yeah.
it's just about having a sense of empathy. That's all. It's all it's about.
Yeah.
But everyone can have an opinion. It's just a matter of being able to articulate it in a way that says, "Look, this is where I stand on it." And as long as it's not something that's going to be harmful, I mean,
And I was gonna say, when it comes to like things like the N-word, also, are you gonna be hurt as a result of using it in the
Right.
wrong place
Yeah.
around the wrong people,
right.
or you know, in a situation, you know? Because I'm very much like your wife. I don't use it. It's not something. If it's in music, I'm one of those people that I'm at this age. I like beep it out for myself, you know. And that's where my comfort zone is.
I got a friend, pretty sure she won't be listening to this, but I got a friend that a lot of the time when she sees me, she will imitate a British person, right? And I just, over the years, and I don't want to upset her feelings, right? But I'm getting upset. I'm going, oh, here we go again. Like, you know, I just get, when someone I meet and they do it, like in school, which it often happens throughout the year, it doesn't bother me. But when I meet someone and they do it again and again and again, you know, it's just all right. And they think they're being funny.
But it's like life lesson. Okay, how do we address this? How do you address this situationally?
I'm going on an SEL course on how to handle it real soon.
Well, I think that's incumbent on you to say, look,
Yeah,
that's enough. We're good.
Yeah.
Like, move on.
but I really, but again, I feel it's partially my issue as well, and that I need to kind of suck it up, buttercup, so to speak.
Not
But
necessarily.
why?
Yeah.
That again, and I think our kids do that too.
Right,
They're like,
right.
oh, I can't say anything because maybe I'm being too sensitive.
Yeah.
No, if it's something that bothers you, it bothers you for a reason.
Yeah.
Then you have to address it.
It shouldn't be a big deal for her just to say, I'm all right. But you have to let her know, okay, I don't appreciate that. I don't find that to be funny. And then if she keeps going from there, it's like, all right, now you know, so chill out. Like,
Right.
I just know that I'm so silly in other ways that more than likely I'm just being silly about this. So until I kind of dug in and kind of filtered through, why do I have an issue with it? Two guys I met in Starbucks, might have told this story, met in Starbucks a few years ago, and they were from London. And they said, oh, you're from the UK? I said, yeah, Bristol. And in England, if you're from Bristol and someone else finds out you're from Bristol, then they start doing the farmer's accent. All right, you all right? Yeah, how you doing? So they talk like that and they kind of make fun. But I don't have any trace of that rough Bristolian accent anymore. Not even rough, just that original Bristolian accent. And it is very southwesterly kind of, there are a lot of farms around there. But I immediately, like, you don't know me, you know, and you're doing this, like, mocking. But again, I kind of called myself off pretty quick, but I was pretty infuriated when I left, because I realized just how ignorant some people can be in, and again, it's a very social, emotional learning, not understanding that you're doing something that's actually upsetting someone else.
Yeah.
You know,
that's why I love being Irish, because we don't care about anything. and,
well,
and it's also a sense of like humor that's just very self-deprecating and very just rough on each other. And it's very, I mean, I'm only half Irish, but and I'm not like Ireland Irish, but just like my whole family, we rip into each other all the time.
Yeah.
My friends, we make fun of each other all the time for like the things that are probably like the most embarrassing that we know about ourselves.
Yeah.
It's on the table. It's not, we don't say that, because it's like make fun of them. And then, and I even teach my kids the same thing. I'm like, hey, whatever. And I'll like make fun of them, or they'll make fun of me. Like my daughter today was like making fun of me. I was bringing her out of the car. She's like mocking my voice and stuff. I'm like, you making fun of me? She's like, yeah. I'm like, that's good. Whatever. But it's having that sense of, you know, being able to let things roll. But I do agree. You have to have a point though, where you say, if I'm not okay with that, I have to be able to say that.
Yeah.
You know, I just feel like for most things, I don't really care. And I think that helps me as a teacher not to care so much, because when they see that I can make fun of myself, when they see that I kind of I allow them to say stuff and whatever, it kind of like breaks down the barrier of like, I'm afraid of this guy. And I kind of, you know, I can now let my guard down a little bit, because I could say things. It's like, whatever. And then they see that if I don't respond with anger, but I'm like, yeah, you're right. Or something like that. Or I'll just be like, did I spell this right? No. I'm like, oh God, I can't spell. Like I don't get embarrassed. I don't say I'm a moron. I'm like, I'm smart, but I just can't spell, or whatever it is.
We all have our flaws.
Right. And I think that they need to see that, especially for honors kids, because they all get afraid of asking a question because they're afraid of being wrong, or answering because they think they might be wrong. And I just say, look, who cares? Just try.
And I think that is one of the bigger lessons that we can show students in class, is that we're fallible ourselves, and that, look, we're going to have goof ups. We're going to, you know, this week I was calling out students in class like willy-nilly, because I needed them for something, and I said, please don't think that I know your names. I just got a little sheet here with all your faces on it. So, you know, I'm still in that early stage of learning like 65 new names. Actually, not 65 new names. I have a lot of my previous sophomore students. Something happened really, really nice this week. I was teaching away. All of my classes are pretty much fantastic. Got some, you know, you always got some characters. You're like, okay, this is going to be interesting to see how all this pans out. But so far, no complaints. And I heard Mr. Jones, and I'm like, what's that? Mr. Jones. And I saw this bright beaming face, mask on, but all up here was like pure smiles and happiness. And I couldn't recognize her name, because again, just the whole face wasn't there, but it was just enough to kind of throw me off because of the mask. I said, how you doing? I knew she was an old sophomore. She's now a senior. How you doing? She said, I'm doing great. Guess what? I said, what? She said, I'm now meditating. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And she said, guess when I started? I said, when? She said, remember when you used to do those meditations in class? She said, it changed my life. I meditate every day. And there was such a, like, she is a completely different person. Very outgoing, very confident, mature, happy, just, you know, and before just quite a bit more reserved, but just amazing to see that. And I think you were saying a story as well, right, about someone that was
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole concept, I mean, now we can get into some of the specifics. Is, you know, in the beginning of the year when students don't really know you very well, I start to just give them some habits, like study habits, and just give them some techniques and try to, I was mentioning last week about creating a schedule and a routine that works for them. And what I found was many of them tried to write something that was more to make me happy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not, this is for you. I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
ultimately you have to do this. And I said, you got to try to stick with it, find something that you'll be more productive and happier and less stressed out and not procrastinating and all those kind of things. Because again, they never probably registered. Most of them have never registered that. Then many of them were saying, I can't go to sleep. I just can't fall asleep. So I get like 4 hours of sleep a night. I said, well, you got to try to fix that. You can't just allow that to be the norm,
Yeah.
because you're going to be exhausted every single day. I just can't sleep. I'm just up all night. And that was many students were like that. And I said, do you ever try to go to sleep? Do you ever do? And there was a student who said, I just meditate. He just says, you know, I do a quick, 15, 20-minute meditation before I go to bed. And he's a student who's really an outgoing student and had a great opening project for the Who Am I project, where he really showcased himself with a lot of really memorable things. And the rest of the class was just like taken by that and saying, all right, like that works for you. You seem to have a pretty good understanding of who you are, and you seem to have a good demeanor, pleasant, affable. And he just said it very matter-of-factly to the point where other students were like, oh, maybe that's an option. It just, and again, it wasn't me promoting anything.
Yeah.
Because I don't do it myself, so I didn't even think about it. But another student was just kind of sharing his experience. Well, that's what I do. And other students kind of were like, maybe I'll try that. And just the idea of exposure to different methods, no matter what it is. But I always try to use real life situations. If I get an email from a former student, I'll ask the student, is it okay if I share this with my class? Because it's all kind of validation of what I'm doing works. So early on, it's all a part of that like ethos, the credibility. Like, I know you don't really know me that well. I know that I'm tough on you, but here's some former students who will tell you, and I had a student this past week email me who graduated in 2019, and I said, I never expected to hear from this kid again. I said, he sat there all year. I think he wrote a satire that was mocking me. and it hurt my
I'd
feelings.
like to read that, please.
I probably still have it in like a,
I know you saved it.
a folder that says like, a couple bad words. But, and I said, I even wrote that in email. I'm like, didn't you write something pretty bad about me? And I said, but I'm really glad of where you are right now. He said, I was listening. I took a lot of the lessons you taught in class about, how to organize, how to, be more productive, how to, just do what you want to do and not overthink and all the different things. And I said, you didn't participate much. So I'm really happy to hear that I had an impact on you, because I never would have assumed that happened based on just our interactions in class. Yeah. And he said, even acknowledged it. It was a long email too. And he even kept saying, he's like, I'm sorry, this is such a long email. And I wrote back almost equal length, just saying, I appreciate it. It's very nice of you to say, and I hope, continued success. But it's just good to hear that validation sometimes that, what you're doing is still working for the students. And it's not going to be all of them, but you never know who it is going to be either. And I think that's what I love about it. It's that idea that I'm talking to, 20 something faces of class. Some of you are going to really benefit from being in here. And I never know who they're going to be. Yeah. And I just kind of look forward to finding out who they are by the end.
You know what? The other day after going to talk to my seniors, it was like sitting there and they're so petrified of what the future holds. And like we talked about it before, them just trying to get to this end goal, not even like thinking about college, but thinking what happens after that, right? So it was like I wrote them an email after going and seeing them all in their shops. We like did our visit. I wrote an email. I'm like, this is kind of what happened to me and how I ended up here in North Jersey when I'm a South Jersey girl, and this isn't what I expected. And there were so many kids who popped up like in my office, like, thanks for writing that. Like, kids that were like, I want to go to Yale or I want to go to Harvard, like those big name schools. And I'm like, but why do you want to go there? They're like, because of the name, and I think that a lot of our kids again, with you doing what you do in the classroom, they're hearing you. You don't know it right away. Like this
Yeah.
kid said, you don't know it right away, but that's the big thing about even incorporating SEL right now. Like it's critical because they are listening. They hear us. They want to know what we're thinking, what we're feeling, so that they can actually learn from it.
Yeah.
It's all about making them feel better about where they are and where they're going. It's that whole "it's gonna be all right" kind of pep talk on a daily basis, and I genuinely think that it's not just words. I tell them, and it's funny because I use my siblings as an example. There's four of us, and I said, look, three of my siblings. I went to college to be an English teacher. I went day one. I'm going to teach English. I got out. I've been teaching English ever since. I said my other three siblings went for completely different things, and they're working and they're happy with their professions right now. I said my younger brother went first thinking he's going to be a police officer. He's taking all criminal justice classes. Then he switches over to history because he thinks he's going to teach history. So then he has a history major, a criminology minor, and now he's an editor and producer at the Big Ten, which has nothing to do with any of those classes.
Yeah.
And I said, he works on documentaries and commercials and all these things with sports and, for basketball and for football. And everyone's like, that's awesome. And it's like they don't even recognize that as a position. Because when you say, what do you want to be? They're like doctor, lawyer. It's like the same five occupations because they're just not aware of what else is out there. And you just say, it's going to be all right. You just go through, you hit the mile, you go through the different things, you learn. Everyone has different routes to get where they want to go, but just keep following what you want to do. And I think that's one of the biggest topics, though, that I think could be more ruffling feathers for me is when I start to get into more, I want you to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not as interested in what your parents want you to do. Now, that's an area where I know parents would be like, hold on.
Yeah.
But I genuinely tell them, I said, look, what do you want to be? I want to do this. What do your parents say? They want me to be in medical field. I said, is that what you want to do? No. And I'm like, well, why? And it's almost like they've never heard someone say it's okay not to want to follow what your parents want you to do. I've had students in the past tell me, I really want to go to school. I want to be a nurse. And my parents are completely against me going to college. They say I have to work right away. I have to help supply for the, make money for the family. And it's tearing me apart. And we can't get, financial aid, not legal citizen, all the different things. And it's just like, you got to go for it, man. You got to go for what you want to be.
Yeah.
And
to feel fulfilled, like
right,
that's
and not resentment.
And
you don't want to resent your family for, I said, if you can make it work, if you could find ways, and I talk about being an RA to live on campus for free and so there's other ways to make it work, and if you have to take out loans, whatever, like go for your passion with reckless abandon and just go for it, like very romantically. I just tell them, and I know if the parents are listening, they're probably like, this guy better shut his mouth. And I'm like, but I look at it and I say to myself, and this is what I've always said, I work for them.
Yeah.
Like those are my bosses, my students. It's not my supervisor. It's not the assistant. It's not the principal. It's not anybody else. And I'll tell everybody that I don't care.
Yeah.
And I'll just say that I work for them. I don't work for the parents.
Yeah.
I'm telling them what I think is best for them. And to think about and to make their own choices, because this is their life, right? So I've had a student who father said, I got you an interview with Harvard, Legacy. And she's like, okay, goes on the interview. And I say, how was it? And this is to me. She's like, I didn't really like it. I said, where do you want to go? I want to go to Montclair. I said, okay. Do you think you'd be happier there? Yeah. And she said, I just don't want to go. I said, yeah, I talked to your father about it. She goes home, talks to her father. Yeah. It like crushed him. But then she came back a year later and she's like, I'm at Montclair. I'm having a great time. My relationship with my father's fine. He got over it. And I said, that's awesome. And she was so excited to be able to tell me that because she felt so empowered about it. Like she had to do it. It wasn't me. It wasn't like, she didn't say it was like you did. I said, no, you did it. Like I told you what I would do, but ultimately you had to do it because you felt like that was what best for you. And again, who knows sometimes how everything's going to work out. It's a kind of a dangerous territory, but
I tell my students the same thing. I get a bit concerned around that topic, so I don't want any knocks on the door, any phone calls, or any emails. But I certainly say I've noticed over the years that it's certainly a cultural thing, right?
Yeah,
so
at times.
Some have no choice and they feel absolutely obligated, and no, this is what we're going to do, and I've resigned myself to that. So they do it, and that's fine. But I certainly give the speech for you can do college, that's fine. Me, I would probably say college is for if you want to go into these professions. Maybe you need like a good, bunch of years under your belt to get, become a doctor, lawyer, blah, blah, blah. I said if you want to be an artist or a designer, I would argue that you could probably get just enough work experience going straight into the industry, sidestepping from high school. By the time you reach the age that you would have graduated college, that you'll be earning as much as when you can kind of start out leaving college and going into a career. So, but I'll argue all sides, and I'll also let them know that, look, you could stop going to school today, right? There's a reality to it. You could stop going to, and I said this the other week, you could stop going to school today. You're going to be fine. As long as you don't sit on your butt and do nothing, but you're going to be fine. Like if all the schools didn't exist anymore, you would be fine. As long as you had some sort of drive and you tried new things and discovered new things. But the reality is, if you put in the work now and leave school, what a trajectory you're going to have, So it's going to take away all that hard work later. Not all, but it's going to take away a lot of hard work later. If you don't do the work now and you want to get up here, then you're going to have to climb like crazy to get to where you want to go. But you do the work now and you leave school, you're going to have such a trajectory. You're going to find it easier to get to where you want to go in the future. And in fact, Dave, you were saying that the students just want to feel better. So I'm minding my own business, and one of the students shouted out, "Mr. Jones, inspire us." So I said, "What for? Life? Yeah, whatever." And I'm like, it's going to get a lot harder. And this was about 12:30. And they're like, "Oh." I said, what's going to happen is your ability to handle all of this is going to grow and grow and exceed even your expectations, so that one day you'll be going through things you couldn't even imagine you'd ever have to face. And you'll get through it. And you'll look back and go, holy crap, I just got through all of that.
Yeah.
And not realizing like how strong but they were still a little bit down. So I knew I had to do something. And just at the end of the class, someone shouted out, "Roses are red and violets are blue." And before they finished, I said, "Roses are red and violets are blue. If I can get through life, so can you." And the whole class like erupted, and they stood up and they looked like they were pointing at me, and then they did like slow like snaps with their fingers. But yeah, they cheered me on. So, and I was recording audio at the time. I think I actually had the audio of that. I think. So yeah, that was brilliant. But just you get asked questions sometimes, right? So that's the other side of this coin, is that there's all of these teachable moments, and then sometimes they just like hearing the answers.
Yeah.
And then they'll think, what can we ask?
But the issue too sometimes is that they don't see things the way that we can look at things in hindsight. Like college, for example, they think is just about the like the school
Right.
part of it, like the classes and the work.
Not the experience.
Right.
itself.
So that's the problem. The educational process is about the growth of the whole individual. And that's what the SEL process is as well. It's about the individual, not just the X's and O's of the school day. And I often just ask them, sometimes I'll be like a little ahead with the class or something. And I'll say, this Friday, what do you want to talk about? You guys you want me to go over SAT stuff. What would make you guys feel better? And I'll say, you want me to help you with college stuff? And then undoubtedly, if they go college, they'll like tell us stories from college. And I'm like, all right. And I tell them stories, and it's nothing academic.
Yeah.
It's just how much fun I had, and the
Yeah.
people I met, and I always keep it, PG-13, but I just tell them like it's a fun experience.
Yeah.
And I said, if you could live away, live away. You figure things out, and it's not easy, but it's worth it. And you come out the other end, and like you said, you're a little bit more resilient. You're a little bit more prepared, but you're going through all these things with a bunch of other people who are going through those things too. So it makes it a little bit easier, that jump.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times they might say, well, what do I do if I don't know what I want to do? It's just, just jump in, you'll figure it out, right? Like you just got to you'll learn about yourself more. You'll develop the independence. You'll develop
figure out your
relationships.
values,
Yeah.
what's really important to you.
Yes.
But again, they've never had that platform to do it. So in saying that, right, they think about the price and the cost. Like, can you put a number on
Yeah.
the experience that you
Right.
get and how much you grow in those situations, even being away from home
Mhm.
when maybe you had a certain number of responsibilities and things that you had to take care of, and now you get to just be you and figure out what that is.
Yeah, and a lot of the students know that as well. I never try and talk students out of it. I just show them that there's another side to all of this. But then, as this, like the stories you just told, I've slowly realized over the years that maybe I missed out. I went to college, but mine was just like a local college in the town, and very good. No longer exists. Brunel Tech. Shout out Brunel Tech in Bristol. Long gone. But yeah, so to have had that experience though, I was already in the workforce 4 years. I had already got a couple of trades underneath my belt. Little did I know that would set me up one day to become a teacher. And that was from the age of 16. So I'm teaching now what I've been doing since the age of 16.
Yeah.
I'm an old man now,
But I think going back to like the life lessons that you teach in class, there's a couple things that I do that always seem to resonate with the students, and one I'll actually might do next week, where I try to put them in the scenario of what is going on in the book. So a lot of English teachers will give like anticipation guides, like, do you agree or disagree with this statement? And one of them is always, for the Crucible, is you would agree to something you didn't do to take a lesser sentence if you were kind of accused of something, right? Or would you admit to something that you were, told you were guilty of, but then take the lesser sentence? So they answer the question. They say, I would never admit to something I didn't do. And they all kind of circle that one. And then the next day in class, what I do is I take my phone, and they're all talking about their answers. And I put my phone in one of the book bags. And then I go, and I'm a great actor in class, and I say, where's my phone? I said, it's not funny. I said, I got pictures of my family on there. I want my phone back. I had it right up here. And I've been doing this for years. And the kids they all start, that's funny. And then they all get they see I get serious, and they're like, oh crap. And then somebody always bites right on what I want me to call it. I said, yeah, give me your phone. I'm going to call it. So I call it, and I never have my ringer on, but I put it on for this purpose. Just, I have to put it as loud as possible. And they're all looking at it, and then he starts ringing, and they're all like, oh. And then a kid will pull it out of the book bag. And I'm like, what do you have my phone for? Like, what are you doing? And everyone else will just remain 100% quiet, and they're just looking at this kid. I always have to pick a boy. I picked the girl one time, and she
Cried.
cried.
I would cry. I would
She
cry.
cried. So I was like,
I'm going red out of guilt.
Yeah.
I feel guilty.
yeah, so she cried. So I'm like, girl's done. Luckily, she liked me, so I was like, all right, we're good. But the kid, I'll say, listen, tell me it was a joke, and I got my phone back. I'm good. But just admit you took it as a joke, and we'll move on. If not, I'm calling discipline right now. They're coming up here, and you can explain it to them. And they'll go, I didn't take it. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm having discipline come up right now. And everyone's like, just say it was a joke. Who cares? And usually no one comes to their defense, because this is what happens in the Crucible, by the way. And
Spoiler alert.
yeah, well, it's from the 1690s. But the point is, usually, but not always, they'll just say, yeah, I took it. It was a joke. And I'm like, what'd you put for that number on the anticipation guide? They're like, I would never admit to And he's like, and the kid's like, oh my God, they get it. Like, you just put him in the situation that we answered hypothetically, you made it real. And then they never forget that. Every year at the end of the year, they're like, you gotta do the phone thing, you gotta do the phone thing. And I do it to every class, and I try to find somebody that could do it too, that would probably be all right about it. And it's based on where the book bags are too, because I have to find someone where they're sitting and they're not like looking. I'm like, oh, I gotta tie my shoe or something. It's tough to do. But when I do it, it's always kind of funny to see how little they support each other in some cases.
Yeah.
And how they're, and if someone else jumps up, I'm like, were you in on it too? And they're like, no, I'll be quiet. Like, it's things like that where you get to show them this is how that kind of stuff happens. You pick a minority out, a group, an individual, you blame them for something, no one else gets involved, they get arrested, they get in trouble, and you just go, well, it wasn't me. I don't care. I'm staying out of it. And this is how things like, whether it's the Holocaust or post 9/11, whatever, this is how that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
And then they kind of realize, yeah, like this could easily happen again. Whether it's something on a social media thing, it could be anything. And then the other thing that I do that I think really resonates with them is when I teach transcendentalism, which is just kind of like, it's a part of romanticism, but it's where it's more the positive side. It's about self-reliance, intuition, getting back in touch with nature, nonconformity, rejection of materialism, all the things I feel like everyone needs to do now.
Yeah.
And I say, while we're learning this unit, I want everyone to take a week as a project to be a transcendentalist. You have to, and I give them a checklist. Do this. Limit your time with technology or completely cut it out. Obviously, last year it was like hard because everyone's on their computer. But this year I could be like, we're not using the Chromebooks. You can put that away. I don't want to see phones. And I tell them to write down their screen time on the first day. What is your average screen time? It's like 5, some of them like 8 hours, whatever. And I said, I want to see that go down by next week. And then some of them get down like under an hour, half hour. And you get to see who takes it seriously. And they have to do random acts of kindness. They have to do a half hour in nature, reflecting and write a poem. They have to do daily reflections, but they can only speak positively. They can't write negative things about their day. So I give them topics, talk about your family, your friends, your school, your future, yourself. And then I have them do all these a letter of appreciation to somebody that has helped you, and then share it with them.
We should include this as an exercise in the app.
Yeah.
You know,
the thing is, the kids get finished, and then we just have a day talking about it and our experiences, and they are just so happy.
Yeah.
And I have kids come in there, and a girl said once, she goes, and she started tearing up when she was trying, and then she was full out crying. She said, I went into a Target one day, and I saw a father, and this is usually around like Thanksgiving time. I saw a father with his daughter, and the daughter was asking him, can I get this toy? And he looked really downtrodden. He was like, really seemed like kind of upset and not really all there. And he was like, no, we're not going to get that. We didn't come here for that. And then she kept asking, and he was just like, nah. He was just kind of like really not even being passionate about anything. And she walks over, and I said, this is the kind of thing you got to do. Look for opportunities to do something nice. And she walked over and she said, excuse me, I would like to buy that for your daughter. Would you mind if I did that? And the guy immediately starts to cry. And then she's still crying. And I still get the chills even just thinking about her talking about the story. And he goes, my wife died a year ago, and this is going to be like the first Christmas without her. And I feel like that was her talking through you. Yeah. And she was like, everyone, the kids in the class were crying. And I said, that was an opportunity that you probably would have never done had you not been like, had the presence of mind to say, what can I do to be good right now? Like, that just showed up, and she will never forget that. I'll never forget that. Most of the kids in class will never forget that. Yeah. Just from like a very simple act that, you know, let's say it costs $10. I mean, would you spend $10 for that moment? I mean, that's priceless. So it's things like that where you say, all right, this is working. And again, you're not going to get through to everybody. Most of them are not going to put their phones away. They're going to do exactly what they did as if there's no project existing. But there's going to be a handful of them that it really changes them. And I get emails. I have students after the fact say, I just did another week of transcendentalism because I was stressed out as a senior, even though I'm not even in your class. I just did it again just to kind of get myself balanced. I've had students say I'm off all social media now. I feel totally at peace, connected with the world. I know who I am. And I tell my friends and they're like, they can't do it.
Yeah.
And I said, that's all right, but I'm good. And he goes on walks and just the things that people say after the fact, I'm like, you're so wise. And I give you such credit for being able to get outside your comfort zone and try something new.
Mhm.
It really like impresses me because I never would have been able to do that as a kid.
Yeah, that everything that you mentioned, I think when you, again, we keep going back to that because that's the essence of, you know, where this podcast kind of stems from is from the Mello.app website, which is MLLO.app. And on there is a growing list of meditations, some movement meditations and guided meditations and what have you, along with ASMR and everything else that's coming. All the interviews with teachers that are taking place, soon taking place, and interviews that I've done. But that some of the more profound, those are profound results, and some of those results are mirrored in my own experiences. When you take time out to just be and not be on your phone and what have you, you're more mindful during your day. It brings back this reconnectedness, and barely said that, and it brings back this connectedness to life and to people, and it makes you want to do things for people that you don't even know you. Like there was this lady I would drive by every single day on the way into work, and I started meditating, and then over the weeks, as you were telling your story, I was like, yeah, I wanted to get like a massive bouquet of flowers and just one day just go up, give them to her, just tell her, you know, what a job you do. Or she's a crossing guard for children at school on the way in, and the kids love her, I could tell. And next thing I know, she was no longer there, so she must have retired. Hopefully, this was way before the pandemic. But yeah, and other instances where you want to help. My wife, without even thinking about it, she doesn't need to meditate. She does stuff on a regular basis, you know, making food for people and delivering it and going out of her way. And she has regular dates with this 102, 103-year-old guy. She just loves him. She's a father of a close friend, but he dearly loves her company. So she makes him like a massive cheesecake and goes and she'll spend an afternoon, you know. Yeah. But just those small, but they're big acts, right? They're not necessarily small, but they're significant. And yeah, reset the dopamine in our brains, get rid of those phones for a little while, and connect more from here instead of up here, right? Yeah. So yeah, brilliant stuff. It's 9:06. We worked our way up to 3 viewers today. I'm sorry if you started at the very beginning and there was technical issues.
We don't need to go there again.
I know, but I'm just
Thanks for tuning in.
Yes, thanks for tuning in. I'm getting drowned out. Hey, I want to tell you guys. Speaking up for myself. But yeah, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, so that's it. Hopefully Dan can join us next time. He wasn't able to join us today. He'll be here. That's one thing that did get cut off at the very beginning is Dan called very early on just to say, hey, sorry, can't make it. And that's it. So we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for stopping by.